And we are now shifting to English, and I would like to ask Matthias Meissner from World Wildlife Fund for Nature, Germany, to come to the stage. You are Policy Officer, International Agriculture and Sustainable Land Use. And I know that WWF has been very active when it comes to international politics as well in this area. So we are curious to hear what you will tell us. Please, Matthias.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Matthias. Thank you for the introduction. I know that I should start with some Swedish sentences. I know, and I learned that this is very good to just warm up the audience, and but I can't. I'm very sorry, and I'm even more ashamed because I spent 4 weeks in summer here burning down your forests and catching all the pike population near Västervik. And so I spent my whole time to destroy your nature here. And I didn't have any time to learn Swedish, only tack så mycket and hej då. So first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in English. I assume that German is not better, so English. And yes, I'm working for WWF Germany as I'm responsible for international policy and sustainable land use. I feel like Madonna. And but my focus in my work is the common agriculture policy of the European Union. And I have the pleasure to coordinate our working group within our network of European national organizations of the PANDA to come up with one voice for the upcoming reform of the common agriculture policy. And therefore, I personally, when Lennart Glad asked me, again Lennart, but he didn't call me in my stable because I was in the office. So he called me, and I thought, yeah, it's a very good opportunity to talk about a specific point, what should be changed in the European agriculture, or to reduce the effects of agriculture in Europe on climate change, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I have to admit that my perspective, our perspective, is pretty much on the mitigation side, so reduce the greenhouse gases instead of adaptation in our work. Sorry, Vicky. And therefore, I think it's a good opportunity to start a discussion, and because we only have 14 more month time to put better solutions on the table for the upcoming common agriculture policy, because by the end of 2012, we're going to have, hopefully, if the European Parliament and the Commission decide to have a new common agriculture policy, we're going to have a policy which will last for the next 7 years. So it's time, the seminar is in the right time to start or to continue talking about how to improve the common agriculture policy in the respect on climate issues. So I structured my presentation in 3 blocks, and I really try to keep my 12 minutes now I have. So first of all, short introduction, greenhouse gas emissions in Europe's agriculture, then what has to be changed, and how should look the near or the upcoming common agriculture policy like. First of all, the agriculture in Europe is responsible for 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Very different between the different member states, but this is the average. So 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the European Union coming directly from agricultural production. How is it distributed? Well, let's say 58% is nitrate oxides, and the rest is methane. In the calculations of our I'm of the European inventory. When we have I'm going to have a closer look on how this is distributed. But this statistic is missing quite a substantial, important issue. The emissions coming from drained peat and wetlands. And for example, in Germany, additionally to methane and nitrous oxide, we have 5% of the global German greenhouse gas emissions coming from organic soils, which were drained in the past and now used for agriculture purposes. So this is a very important issue. We do have nitrous oxide emissions coming especially from soils and from manure management, and we have methane emissions mainly coming from, well, from our cows, from burps, from enteric fermentation, and the management of the manure. We do as well have, in the statistic, I don't think that you can read it behind, but rice, which is not a very important issue for Europe, nor for Sweden, but some in Spain and Italy, but the percentage is so small that I will not talk about this. So looking a little bit deeper, we have in the livestock sector, we have the methane coming especially from enteric fermentation. The farm fertilizer management, we have the methane emissions from decomposing of organic components, so from dung, manure, shit, and a partial conversion of the nitrogen, which is part of the manure. And the third, the third is especially the use of soils under agriculture, so mainly mineral fertilizer, farm fertilizer, sewage sludge, legumes, pasturing, left over from harvest, and, land use changes. So we have from the soils as well nitric oxides and carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide mainly is coming from land use changes. And we should not think that thank you. The CO2 in agriculture is only coming from the Amazon. No, it's produced here as well in our continent. But beside this, we do have, I have to admit, CO2 imported by our fodder. So if we import fodder from, for example, Latin America, from Argentina, from Brazil, do you hear me or do I need a microphone? No, huh? Okay. Yeah. Oh, coming back to normal life. So if we import fodder for our animal production, milk production, we import greenhouse gases as well to our continent. We made a calculation and, oh, it's here. So the European Union is importing so much soy from Argentina and from Brazil, which is an equivalent to 12.8 million hectares of agricultural land in Latin America. So we virtually use the land over there, which is, I had a look in the Google, Wikipedia, and I hope that this is right, that you in Sweden have 3.1 million hectares of arable land, agricultural land, is it right? Something like this. So it's fourth time of your agricultural land, or pretty much the German arable land. So only used for soy import, and you can imagine that the majority of those fodder is produced not on areas where we had for centuries agricultural use, but on freshly converted areas where we do have a push or a huge amount of constant emissions of CO2. So we import emissions by importing fodder. And we should not forget the emissions from the production of artificial fertilizer. So 1.8 of our world's energy use is used for artificial nitrogen fertilizer, so Haber-Bosch. I would like to use the following map to illustrate what I just said concerning livestock and the emissions from nitrogen. This map shows, it's not done by the Panda, it's done by the European Commission, by the European Environmental Agency. It shows the nitrogen surpluses in the European Union. So dark violet is more than 150 kilo nitrogen surplus per hectare. And so we can see these are the dark areas where we have a huge surplus of nitrogen, and nitrogen surplus means as well not only eutrophication, but as well a lot of nitrous oxides emissions coming from those areas where we have surpluses. What does it mean for climate? We do have here in those areas Bretagne, Netherlands, Germany. One of our farmers' representatives called this area here in Germany the Silicon Valley of the German farming industry, where we have the biggest concentration of pork production and milk production in Germany. So we have a concentration here, Italy as well, Denmark. We have a concentration of animal production in those areas based on imported fodder, basically. And so what we do is we import greenhouse gases to those areas. We produce nitrogen surpluses, and by this we produce a lot of either carbon dioxide in those areas where we produce the fodder, or we produce a lot of nitrous oxides in those areas where we have a concentration of animal farming. We are not able to spread the manure in the right way. We have a separation between plant production and animal production in those areas. And here, I don't know, Sweden as well, quite a bit, huh? 5 minutes, okay, I think I'm in time. So we do have a strong concentration, and I showed you this map to illustrate some basic problems: the concentration of animal production and the landless production of meat and other animal products. So what should be changed, in my point of view, or in the point of view of many WWF colleagues? We should integrate animal production and plant production better than we do in the moment. We should think about where we source our fodder, whether we should source it somewhere else. I think this is in line with what you just said. And whether we should integrate legume production and fodder production better in our system, agriculture system. The usage of manure, of course, should be put, for example, in biogas plants, and not only using biogas plants, what we do in Germany in the moment, with huge corn areas, and but we should use manure as a byproduct in biogas plants. And we should think about limiting heads per hectare. So actually we can't afford having no landless livestock breeding anymore. I don't know whether this is English or not, but landless. Concerning the soil, we need to reduce the nitrogen surplus by more efficient use of fertilizer. We should think about whether we should apply mineral fertilizer in the spring, and then when our tanks are full of manure, we spread the rest of the manure, although the plant doesn't use it anymore. What is happening in Germany, at least. Soil improvement to make the soils more resilient to changes, climate changes, to make it more fertile and to increase the storage capacity for water. We need crop rotation. protection of permanent pastures. We see that the permanent pasture, although it's a sink for carbon dioxide, is all pretty much under pressure to be converted to arable land. So we have to protect it, and we have to think about restoration of drained peat and wetlands. And this will be expensive, actually, for our community. So the question is whether we can achieve this with only a sectoral approach, so just thinking on how to make the greenhouse or the methane or less methane per liter of milk, or if we should have a more systemic approach. We go for a more systemic approach, systematic approach, so holistic. Concerning the future of the CAP, is the current CAP, Common Agriculture Policy, able to help to implement those changes? Well, we have 60 billion approximately per year, but 80% is going only into income support. We have 20% investment in agriculture agri-environmental measures. And we have a weak cross-compliance. So the question is, the answer is no. In the moment, it's not possible. Although we know that we can't have a business as usual approach, the current CAP is not fighting against those problems I have mentioned. In our point of view, the CAP has to support the transformation of Europe's agriculture. And what does it mean? The future CAP should foster a transformation of our agriculture which supports those systems which sequestrate carbon, which have an efficient use of nutrients, which is efficient with resources, and which are more resilient to climate change. What we ask for is to support those schemes, those systems with payments. Yes, we have to think about the system, how we do this in a very efficient way and not like everybody receives a little bit of money. We need advisory services and investment into farms, technology, research, and we have to think to withdraw land, as I mentioned, peats and drained wetlands from agriculture production. But in general, this CAP, this money coming from the Common Agriculture Policy, should only be a part of a big toolbox. We need regulation, environmental regulation. We need support, okay, investments, yes. But we need advice, and perhaps we should think about market-based instruments like surplus levies. And I think Mark Driscoll from UK will mention or talk about it later. We need a different consumption pattern because we can't take the cows away from the farms when we still keep eating, for example, as much meat as we do in the moment. So, but I'm afraid the actual proposals coming from Brussels are business as usual. So we have to find ways to push Brussels and other governments and interest groups towards a more holistic approach in our new CAP after 2014. And let's have this first step together. And now we can choose whether these are environmentalists or farmers, but let's do it together. Okay, thank you.
Elisabeth,